Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Sparta Township Planning Board. On behalf of the members of the entire planning board and our professionals, we'd like to thank everyone that is here tonight, as well as those who may be streaming the meeting either now or later on YouTube. This meeting is now called to order. For the record, this meeting is being held on July 17th, 2024, at the Sparta Township Municipal Building located at 65 Main Street, Sparta, New Jersey. The time is now 7:02. The live stream for this meeting may be viewed on YouTube at www.youtube.com/@Sparta Township, capital SPARTA TWP. Please note that adequate public notice of this meeting was given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. So I ask that everyone please stand and join our board and our professionals as we proudly begin this meeting with a salute to our nation's flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And Ms. Fox, can we get the roll call?
Justin Canellis.
Here.
Ernie Ragsdad.
Here.
Christine Dunbar. Here. Mike Sylvester.
Here.
Vice Chairman Bill Enright.
Here.
Chairman Ron Day.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Dean Blumetti. Joan Furman. Here. Jeanette Burke. Here. Celeste Luciano. Here. And Brian Zimmerman.
Here. Okay. So we're going to jump right into the public hearings tonight. So we initially had 3 applications we were going to hear, and I think, Dora, you have an update on one?
Yes, Lakeland Bank, application PB number 24-717. The public hearing has been carried to the August 7th meeting, 7:00 PM at this meeting room here in the municipal building. It's carried without any new mail notices, but with a new newspaper notice.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so the first that we'll be hearing is application PB 24-718. It's a minor site plan for a change in tenancy and a new replacement sign. The application was submitted by Thor Labs Measurement Systems and is proposed to be located at 15 Wilson Drive, Block 12006, Lot 21 in the Economic Development Zone. So folks, please feel free to come up and introduce yourselves, and Mr. Collins will swear you in.
Should we use the microphone?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Donnelly. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Donnelly, Minter, and Kelly, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Thor Labs Measurement Systems, and its parent company, Thor Labs, Inc. As Mr. Chairman said, this is an application for a change of tenancy in industrial building and for changing the messaging on the sign. We've noticed this hearing both by mail and publication. Actually, technically, we noticed for the June hearing, but we were here in June, and we had an announcement at the public hearing in June to carry it today, so we would not have to renotice. I have one witness here, Tom Graham, who will swear in a second. I also, if the board has additional questions, I have operational people from Thor Labs, but I don't think we'll need to get to them because I think Tom will have enough information for the board. So, Mr. Collins, do you want to swear in Mr. Graham, please?
It's, Mr. Graham, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And please state your name and address and spell your last name.
Thomas Graham, Graham. I'm a partner in the firm Dykstra Walker Design Group, 21 Bowling Green Parkway, Lake Hopatcong, New Jersey. I'm a licensed professional engineer. My license is current. I've been licensed for 30 years. I've testified in front of numerous boards in Passaic, Sussex, Warren, Hunterdon, Bergen, Essex counties. I have testified in front of this board in the past and been qualified as a professional engineer, expert witness on all occasions.
Yes, the board recognizes the qualifications of Thomas Graham as a professional engineer, and please go ahead, gentlemen.
Tom, can you go ahead and explain the application to the board?
So we're here tonight for property identified as Block 12006, Lot 12, more commonly known as 15 Wilson Drive. The property is 3.48 acres in size with approximate dimensions of 450 feet deep by 425 feet wide, trapezoidal in shape. The property has frontage along Wilson Drive to the east. There is JCP&L power line easement running along the southern portion of this site. There's a drainage and conservation easement along the westerly portion of the site and an industrial building immediately to the north. The property is located in your ED Economic Development Zone. We're here tonight because Thor Labs recently purchased the property, and as part of the change of occupancy, we have to present this minor site plan application to you. The property is fully developed with an industrial office building, paved parking, site identification sign, mature landscaping, septic system, town water, and electrical service. The property meets all of the bulk requirements of the zone with two minor exceptions. One being the required side yard setback, 30 feet is required. The building is 29 feet to the side yard as per the survey that was provided for the application. The building height in the zoning table was incorrectly noted to be 25 feet. It is actually 35 feet. The building meets the height requirement. A review of the original architectural plan shows that from the first floor to the top of the parapet is only 30 feet. So the building easily meets the 35-foot building height requirement. Going through your planners and engineers reports, there were a couple of additional items that the planner asked us to provide. One was for the parking coverage in the front yard. There exists 21.6% where 25% is allowed. Additionally, there are 10 parking spaces along the front that were approved as part of the original application and not constructed, and they're land banked until such time as those parking spaces may be needed. If we include those parking spaces, the pavement or impervious coverage in the front yard would be 25.2%. The parking setback requirement is 25 feet to a right-of-way line. Both the existing and future meet that requirement, and there's a minimum requirement of 10 feet to a building. The existing parking lot along the front is 8 feet to the building. But those are pre-existing non-conforming conditions. The applicant's proposing no changes to the site, no construction at all. The only thing that we're doing is changing the message on the sign that's in the front yard to reflect the new tenant. And as requested by Mr. Simmons, we're going to restripe the parking field. The building itself requires 46 parking spaces. Currently, there are 33 standard and 2 handicap spaces for a total of 35. As part of the original application, a total of 12 parking spaces were land banked or reserved to be constructed in the future if and when needed. 10 in the front yard and then 2 at the end of the existing parking lot that's on the side. So the site requires 46 parking spaces. The site has 47 parking spaces. There are no plans to construct those land banked spaces, and the parking calculation was based on office use and the light manufacturing use. The building itself is 13,120 square feet. The total floor area is 15,490 square feet. That's the second floor. Mezzanine is office space. So when we did all the calculations, we need 46 parking spaces. This project is the relocation of an existing facility from Blairstown to Sparta. The total number of employees that would be here at any one time is 25, 20 full-time and 5 part-time employees or as needed. So there's plenty of parking for the site the way it currently exists. We don't require any additional parking. As part of that review by the planner, there was some discussion regarding EV spaces or electronic vehicle spaces. Because we're not doing any construction, we're not required to install any EV spaces. Doesn't mean they won't do it in the future, but as part of this application, we want to get the CO so that we can move in and start business here. If they need or there's a desire for the employees to have those spaces, we'll be back in front of the board to deal with it at that time. There is one loading space on the side of the building. On the southerly side, your ordinance requires 2 loading spaces for a building of this size. This particular operation will only have up to 2 trucks per day. So it's very light truck traffic, and there's not a demand or a need for 2 full loading spaces. Again, that's a pre-existing non-conforming condition with respect to your zone. There is one freestanding sign out in the front. That sign is only 18.8 feet from the right-of-way where 20 feet is required. The sign itself is a little bit smaller than the maximum that's allowed, and there is no proposal to relocate the sign. It's a monument sign, and it's consistent with the other signs in the development We're just going to be changing the signboard again to reflect the proposed tenant. There are no building-mounted signs proposed. So the part of the process is a manufacturing process, and there are some chemicals that are used, and those were identified in the limited environmental impact statement that was provided to you. There were the chemicals that are used and the anticipated volume of chemicals, and we know that based on the existing operation in Blairstown, we're just moving it here, the volume of chemicals is very low, and they are all stored in accordance with the manufacturer's requirements and OSHA safety requirements. Anything that leaves the site, chemical, is either stored in bins and carted off by a specific hauler. The rags and such, the containers are disposed of in accordance with all applicable rules. Nothing is discharged to the sanitary sewer system. And then we did receive reports from the township's fire prevention, water department, traffic engineer, and we take no issue with anything in the report. The fire department did require that a Knox box be installed, and since that original report was written, they did require the Knox box. It's been installed. It's been checked by the fire department. They've signed off on it. I just haven't seen the paperwork, but we have that. The county Sussex County Planning Board has issued a letter of no further review required because it's an existing site which they reviewed and approved about 20 years ago, and we have that letter. If it hasn't been provided to the board, we'll provide it. We did reach out to the Sussex County Health Department regarding the septic system, and again, it is properly sized for the number of employees that we had, and it was actually recently constructed just prior to the land sale, and we got the sign-off from the Health Department, and I believe that letter is already on file with the town. So,
Tom, there was a note in one of the professionals' reports about low levels of lighting in the parking lot.
yes.
Can you speak to that for a second?
Sure. On sheet 3 of your plans, we did a light study where we measured the existing light intensities around the property, and there were a couple of dark spots. Since we've done that light study, lamps have been replaced, bulbs have been replaced, and I can report to you that the site is now well lit and sufficient for the hours of operation associated with this project. This is not a 24-hour operation, daytime hours, but the parking light is properly illuminated. I think that I've covered everything I have. I think I covered the planners and engineers reports, but if I missed something, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, so that'll be all the testimony for tonight. Anything else? you wanna
Unless
add?
the board has specific questions regarding operations, but I do have additional witness here who could talk to operations, but I think Tom covered that. There's really not a whole lot of depth we need to go into the operations.
Okay.
Office and industrial.
All right, so with that, let me turn it over to professionals so I can let them ask their questions first, and then we'll bring it back to the dais. So, Catherine, you want to start?
Thank you, Mr. Graham. I only had 2 questions, I believe. One of them was you outlined some of the missing bulk standards that are part of the ED zone, and you'd noted that if the currently banked parking spaces were ever constructed, that they would be in violation of the parking area ratio requirement?
That the maximum that we're allowed, I think, was 25%.
Correct.
And when I add those 10 spaces in, we end up at 25.2%.
Okay, so normally with banked spaces, the reason why they're banked is that you would never have to come back before the board as an amended site plan to construct them. They've already been thought through. But in this case, there's a potential variance that would need to be sought.
If they were constructed, I believe that would have been shown as per the original approval.
Okay.
I believe that would have been something that was granted at the time. I didn't have the resolution to read through it, but I can tell you, we have 37 spaces on site. We only have 25 employees. There was almost no visitors to this site, very low delivery traffic. So we're not coming back to construct these parking
Okay.
spaces.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question was related to Give me one second. Oh, the building layout, and I want to apologize that in my memo, I had noted the building footprint, but not the total building square footage, because there seems to be, there's a mezzanine.
There's a mezzanine
area.
in the front area. If you look at the building, there's a jog about a quarter of the way down. That area is the upper mezzanine,
Okay.
all open below.
And the mezzanine area is just
It's-
office space?
It's office space.
It's finished office space?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is that,
No, that's all I have.
how big is the mezzanine approximately?
About 2,000 square feet, give or take. I can get you the
That's all right.
better number, but
Approximately 2,000.
approximately that.
But Tom, the mezzanine, which is existing, doesn't change the employee count that we've already told the board. Is that
No,
correct?
no, it doesn't change the parking count or the septic generation count. That was all included in the calculations that were done.
And I'll confirm even though my memo only included the building footprint, the parking calculations shown in my memo and on the applicant's plans and application do provide the correct total square footage which the parking was based on, which is fine.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Just referring to my report that I prepared dated May 20th, 2024, as Mr. Graham went through his testimony, he basically touched on all the items that I thought were germane to this particular application. The only other thing I'd like him, or someone else maybe from the applicant's side, to elaborate a little bit on, there was a schematic layout plan for the first and second floor layouts of all the equipment and what have you, but I didn't see a legend explaining exactly what was taking place, so I thought it would be helpful for the board if someone did that.
Okay, I don't have a copy of that exhibit with me, do you?
I don't think I do, but there's a question of what operations will be taking place in the building? Is that the question?
Basically, just so the board has an understanding of it, if they could.
Mr. Collins, this is Tyler. Tyler, I think you should come on this side. Can you state your name for the board, and then Mr. Collins is going to swear you in?
Tyler Morgus.
Tyler, please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And please state your name, spell your last name, and give us at least a business address.
Tyler Morgus, Morgus, 43 Sparta Avenue, Newton, New Jersey.
Tyler, why don't you tell us generally what you do for Thor Labs and Thor Labs Measurement System?
So I'm the VP of the North American operations for Thor Labs, of which Thor Labs Measurement Systems is one of the manufacturing groups that falls under my.
Tyler, why don't you use the exhibit that was given to the board, and you could put it up on the part of the application package, but it's what Mr. Graham was just referring to, and Mr. Simmons was just referring to, and that'll help you identify on paper what the operations are.
So Tyler, can you confirm that you're familiar with the operations of Thor Labs in general and familiar with the operations that will be going on in this facility?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain to the board exactly what the applicant intends to use the facility for, other than office space? I don't think you need to explain what office space is.
Okay. So this is an engineering, design, and manufacturing group, and they make optical measurement systems. So they use light to inspect an object, and then they can, the user of that can find out the exact dimensions and tolerances of the object that's being inspected. So they build the system that does that measurement.
So in particular, what will they, what will happen on the manufacturing floor at this building?
Okay, so this building, I guess from the drawing, you can see that there's an area where we'll have, two CNC machines to manufacture small metal components. And I think that those will be located, where did they put the drawing? I'm sorry, so this is the front of the building, this is the back of the building, or I have this backwards. Stairwell. Where's the loading door? I just need to get oriented on this drawing. It's the stairwell, this is the mezzanine. Okay, so the machining centers are going to be in the back left of the building. So those are standard CNC machines, mills, that make small components. And then you'll see that there's quite a bit of assembly space because the machine that they're building is sort of, yay big by like this. And so the rest of this space is component inventory, which is the shelving, so the long skinny stuff, and then assembly areas where they assemble. They have to put in the electronics, the optics, the granite base plate that the system's built on. So it's mostly just assembly work.
So on the manufacturing, it's the CNC machines, and then the rest is the assembly of the
Assembly.
product
Yep,
before it gets shipped to the customer.
that's correct.
And these operations are happening in other buildings locally, that you're moving the operations to this building, is that right?
Correct. So our
This is
Blair,
not a new process, this is an unknown process.
this is we're moving it from Blairstown to Sparta.
The CNC machine, is that a closed system as far as any oils, cutting oils, or anything like that?
Absolutely. So it's, it's got a little coolant in it. And other than that, you plug it in. It's completely closed circulation. There's nothing that flows in or out of the machine during operation.
Discharged to any drains?
No, no discharge.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me bring it back to the dais. Justin, anything down your end? I'm good. Ernie?
No question.
You had mentioned that there would be proper disposal of liquids. So what liquids, if you have a contained system, what liquids would you need and what would to dispose of and haul out of there? And what would the volume be?
It's incredibly small for this operation since there's only 2 CNC machines. But in a shop, you usually have rags, right? If you wipe a part that came right out of the machine, it could that rag could have some coolant on it. Instead of just disposing of that rag, we use companies like Safety Clean and Clean Harbor to take those, essentially rags away and be properly disposed of.
What is the coolant? And what would be harmful in the coolant to the environment? Because I'm just looking at diagrams of that area, and I see that the building is up against an abandoned railroad trail, potential trail, and quite a nice wetlands in that area.
Yeah. So I think the total amount of coolant is like 10 gallons, 15 gallons, right? So it's not a large amount of fluid. Even if it all leaked, we could just wipe it up. But the coolant is mostly water, and then it has some, it has something in it that's either an artificial molecule or a petrochemical molecule, right, that provides the lubrication. But I'm just not an expert in exactly the chemical formula of the coolant.
Thank you.
Tom, do you want to say anything about your environmental impact statement, your limited environmental impact statement?
Yeah,
on this
I would just say
point?
we did provide a limited environmental impact statement, and we identified all of the chemicals that would be used in the operation and how they are stored and then how they're disposed of. And nothing is going to be stored or leaked out to the wetlands, the storm drainage system, or the sanitary sewer system. Everything is contained within the building.
Good. Yeah, just to carry real quick, is there any floor drains in and around that in and around that process area?
No, sir.
So there's no floor drains, this is all slab?
Slab.
All right, and then from your maintenance and your O&M plans of safety and maintenance and for that equipment, that's done on a monthly basis, an annual basis? When are these machines usually cleaned?
So, I'm not sure so the CNC equipment, is maintained. There's not a lot you have to do with these machines. There's usually a yearly tune-up kind of thing. But essentially, they're designed to run, for 20 years.
Okay, so they're self-contained
Yeah.
and they're maintained on minimum and annual basis? All right, thank you. No further questions.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for expressing interest in moving some of your operations into Sparta. A couple questions about your hours of operation. You said just, I think you said normal business hours before?
It's a daily shift, so 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., covers, when people will be in the building.
During your testimony, you mentioned that they're only expecting 2 delivery trucks per day with only 1 loading zone. What's the overlap procedure when when both the trucks are there?
Up to 2 per day, and they can schedule when trucks come and go. So typically, there is not an overlap. And if there was a time where 2 trucks ended up on site at the same time, there was sufficient area where a truck park in the parking space until it could get to the loading dock.
And there wouldn't be any loading for that truck that's sitting in the park?
Nothing out in the parking lot. All activities occur in the building or at the space of the building, putting stuff into the truck.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I'm all set. You guys answer my questions.
Just one quick question. So the parking lot lighting is on from dusk till dawn, but your operating hours are from 6 to 6. Is there any potential for dimming those parking lot lights on off hours?
To work with dimming, part of the reason that they're on is just for security. We want, if somebody's in the parking lot at night, we want them to be able to be seen and not just getting around the building. But we can work with your engineer to turn some of them off so that it's not fully lit all night long. That was not the intent.
That's it. It was my only question. Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Right. There was one thing I saw in the report that hadn't been addressed yet, and that was the use of the sprinkler systems. Could you address that?
The building will meet all building and fire codes. If sprinkler system is required, it'll be there. It's hooked up to town water, so the system's pressurized, and it meets the building requirements.
Are they in place now?
I believe that they are, but we can find that out for you.
Okay, if they're not, would you consider putting in, if you have to do it brand new, would you
I
consider
would
some?
say if they're not in today, since the former operation was very similar to what we're proposing, in fact, they had like a dozen CNC machines in there, we're only gonna have 2, and they had the office space, I would say that it does not need to be sprinklered because they would not have had occupancy of that building under the current building code. So if it's not sprinklered, I don't think we would put it in because it's not required.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, John? No. Okay, just a couple quick questions I have. I just want to make sure, so you will be the only company in that building, single tenant building?
Yes, single
Okay,
tenant
great,
building.
thank you. You mentioned there's 25 employees. Are any of those Sparta, is there any opportunity for Sparta jobs there? Or they're all full right now, or?
I think that, Thor Labs has an excellent history of hiring in the county. I myself live in Newton, New Jersey. I moved here because I work for Thor Labs and I own a home. And a lot of the people that work for me work, in the county. So,
Do you
Yeah.
know approximately how many people work in the county for Thor Labs?
I don't have that number off the top.
800,
Yeah.
And certainly we wouldn't discriminate.
Well, wait a minute. We can't take testimony unless the witness is sworn. So I don't have any problem with adding a witness, but you must do it by a witness.
Okay, Robert,
And-
why don't you come up real quick? I don't want to take too much time but I think this is an important point to let the board know about our commitment to the county. Robert, why don't you state your name for the record and a business address and your title at Thor Labs?
Robert Regimbal, Regimbal. I'm Thor Labs' CFO and General Counsel. The address is 43 Sparta Avenue, Newton, New Jersey.
Robert, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
And just please state your name again.
Robert Regimbal, Gimbal.
Thank you, Robert. And now go ahead and testify
Yeah.
as to anything you want to add.
Robert, how long have you worked for Thor Labs?
13 years,
And you're familiar with the global operations of Thor Labs?
I am.
And can you tell us approximately how many employees does Thor Labs have in the county?
In the county, approximately 800.
And globally?
3,000.
3,000, okay. And we hire without regard to where our employees live?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Relative to the sign, I didn't hear much about, just a couple questions there. So in terms of the existing sign, how is it illuminated and how will this sign be illuminated?
So it's a monument sign. There is no internal illumination. There may be one ground-mounted light uplighting it just so that people come through when it's dark, early in the winter or late in the winter. But it would just be a spotlight directly illuminated against the sign, nothing external.
So it's basically what's there now and that's what's
There
going to stay.
now.
So you're just replacing the
That's right.
the face,
Just
basically.
replacing the message on the sign.
Okay, great. Was there anything that talked about the sign in terms of the color, the lettering, anything like that?
So the final message sign is still being decided upon, but
Okay.
Thor Labs, if you're familiar with their other signs in the county, it's block letters. So it'll be Thor Labs in block letters, and we'll probably say measurement systems along the bottom as well, and probably the street address. The colors would either be Thor red and white, or maybe black and white, but nothing outrageous.
Once it's finalized, would you be willing to submit it to the minor site plan subcommittee just to have them take a look at it?
Or to your building department for this sign permit, absolutely.
Okay. Let me see what else was there. And again, you said, in terms of chemicals, there's no outdoor storage of any chemicals, materials,
Absolutely
supplies,
not.
or anything like that?
The only thing outside is the dumpster for the office waste.
Okay, great. That's all the questions I have. Thank you. So with that, let me open it up to the public, to see if the public has any questions relative to the testimony that was given. Okay, I see none.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask you one point of clarification on the messaging on the sign? We'll submit that to Mr. Simmons' office for approval on the messaging on the sign. Is that acceptable? I just want to make it clear, you're not intending for us to come back for another public hearing for the messaging on the sign.
If you can submit it to zoning and let them determine what the proper approval is,
Okay.
okay? And it's either going to be Mr. Simmons or it would be the minor site plan subcommittee. So, okay,
But it will not delay you proceeding with your occupancy. You'll just be trying to make sure your sign meets the sign ordinance.
right.
And the colors are,
That's completely fine.
Explained.
We'll submit
Okay.
it to the zoning official
Okay.
and make sure it complies.
I think we know what the Thor Labs signs look like, so. Now, be careful about size, that you're not changing the size, so you
Not
have
changing
to.
the
and that
size,
was in the
it's actually
drawings.
a little smaller than what's allowed. The
Okay.
only non-conforming part is it's too close to the right of way.
Okay, thank you.
So,
So, Mr. Collins, I guess, could you
the
help
board-
us with
yeah,
the
if the board
motion?
is ready. By the way, I'm satisfied. I kind of remember this application before, and I think that they were approved for the
Excuse me, Mr. Collins,
parking
before you
spaces.
proceed, did we call for testimony for the public or any?
Yeah, we did already.
We did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah,
I was
no, that,
about the sign. I missed that.
no.
I've forgotten in the past, so thank you.
Okay.
So I'm satisfied that the existing conditions were previously approved and that although we have bank parking spaces here, it doesn't sound very likely that they'll ever be used, but that is a typical requirement of a site plan when the ordinance requirement is slightly larger than the need. And that's a good way to be able to deal flexibly with future applicants who might not actually be Thor Labs, might actually need more parking. So that, the setback, the potential coverage, if the 10 were built or 12 were built. They're all part and parcel of the prior approval. And so now what we're dealing with is an amended site plan and any related relief. So it's a motion by the board to approve the amended site plan with the conditions discussed this evening. It'll be effective this evening, so they can proceed effective immediately to occupy, provided all of their requirements of compliance are met. And they will.
Tom, if you could speak up just a little bit.
Sure,
please.
they will
Sorry.
comply with Dave Simmons's review report and with Catherine Simard's review report and the other review reports, except as explained in this testimony tonight. They will coordinate their security light. They will reduce the hours of operation of the lighting to the satisfaction of the the board engineer, and they may continue to have some security lighting as explained by Mr. Graham, to the extent approved by the board engineer. Any dispute with the board engineer will be returned to the board for final determination. There'll be no disposal of hazardous materials on the site or into the septic system, and they will properly comply with all requirements relating to any waste materials. The existing sign will be illuminated externally only, and the message change on the sign will be subject to the review and approval of the zoning officer and board engineer, but probably also the site plan subcommittee. But this does not delay the applicant proceeding with occupancy immediately. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody else have any other things that, I heard everything that I think I needed to hear? Anybody else in terms of the resolution or the motion? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to adopt the resolution as stated by Mr. Collins?
Make a motion.
Make the motion.
Okay. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Dory, roll call, please.
Nat Burke,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bill Enright,
Yes.
Joan Furman,
Yes.
Justin Canellis,
Yes.
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Ragsdad,
Yes.
Mike Sylvester,
Yes.
Chairman Ronde.
Yes.
Good luck.
All right, motion passed. Thank you,
you.
gentlemen. Good luck.
And welcome.
Okay, so the second application that we'll be hearing tonight is PB 24715. It's a preliminary and final site plan for a new warehouse. The application was submitted by Behringer Corp. and is proposed to be located at 10 Aaron Way, Block 16003. So folks, please feel free to come up and introduce yourselves, and Mr. Collins will swear you in.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Rassiopi. I'm with the law firm of Riker Danzig, and I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Behringer Corp. I'll leave the details of the application in the very capable hands of Mr. Campbell, but in short, we're here tonight to request preliminary and final site plan approval together with the variance for the property located at 10 Aaron Way. What I will say is that I'm pleased to be part of this application. And I say that because we bring this application because we have a local company here, has been here many years, is doing well, and needs to expand, number one. Number two, company wants to expand here, where it is. And three, the complex in which it seeks to build was designed and contemplated exactly for this type of use and structure. I can tell you in this era, with all the challenges and obstacles that the businesses faces, development in New Jersey, having these three components are exceedingly rare. And so when I have an opportunity to present an application in these circumstances, I'm happy to actually participate. And I always request support for these businesses because we certainly can use as many as we can get. That's my 2-minute speech. I would like to say we have a great team assembled here tonight with our engineer and planner, Mr. Campbell, who has been a pleasure to work with, given his attention to detail and his focus on the things that matter. Our architect, Mr. Flanagan, as well as a representative of the Behringer Corp., Wayne Van Horn, who's the operations manager. So if there's no objection, we have the owners here as well. And if there's any questions of them as well, they're here, they can answer any questions.
Mr. Collins, do we need to swear anybody in?
Yes, I'd like to swear anyone who'll be testifying, so we don't forget later. So anybody who will be testifying, I think it was Mr. Flanagan and Mr. Van Horn, please come to
Yes.
this mic over here. And please, everybody who's testifying, raise your right hands. You can do it together. I swear, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And starting with, on my left, your right, please state your name, spell your last name, and give us at least a business address.
Starting with myself, Alan Campbell. I'm a licensed professional engineer and professional planner. I have the firm at 9 Cook Road, Branchville, New Jersey. It's Robert Campbell Associates. I've been a licensed professional engineer and professional planner for in excess of 35 years. I've appeared before the Sparta Board in those years, numerous other boards throughout the county. My credentials have been accepted throughout the state in various different levels of municipal land use, as well as other courts, hearings, and the like. I've also been qualified throughout as a professional planner, as my planning credentials are a little bit more than the typical engineers, where my undergraduate studies were at the Rutgers Urban School of Planning. Prior to having the degree, there was no real degree in urban planning in my days. It was only a graduate degree at that time. So I would say that I've been represented as an expert witness before this board before, and I would hope that would be acceptable.
Yes, we'll just confirm that the board recognizes and accepts the qualifications of Alan Campbell as a professional engineer and professional planner, and we can do the architect's qualifications later before he testifies. But now the architect, please state your name, spell your last name, and give us at least a business address.
Sure. Jeffrey Flanagan, Flanigan, and business address 460 West Shore Trail, Sparta, New Jersey.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And sir?
I'm Wayne Van Horn. I'm operations manager at Behringer's.
Wayne.
Business address would be 17 Ridge Road, Branchville.
And Wayne, please spell your last name.
Sure. Capital VAN, capital HORN.
Thank you. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
So, Mr. Campbell, would you give the board, first of all, the history of the complex, because I think that's important, and then an explanation of our application.
Yes, and thank you. The application tonight is for the Behringer Corp. It's going to be at Block 16003, Lot 5, Number 10 Aaron Way. The property is 2.23 acres and is in your ED zone. What I'd like to start with for this evening, and I won't take much of the board's time, but in 2003, I first became associated with this property, and maybe even later in the 90s, I should say. And in the late 90s, early 2000, Senator Littell had owned this property, and he had approached us to pursue a development as another portion of Sparta's economic development land areas. And what I'd like to go through, and I'll mark as exhibit, Mr. Collins, how do you like the exhibit addressed as?
Would you describe the exhibit too?
As
Okay, yeah,
certainly will.
thanks.
Mark it as A1. Was it already in your plan set, though?
No, it was not.
Okay, so A1.
A1 71724. What I have marked as A1 is titled Final Major Subdivision, Lot 44, Block 26, White Lake Road for White Lake Technical Center. This is sheet 2 of the final major subdivision as it was presented in 2006. January 2006 is the original date. And then there's subsequent dates of January, March, April, and then the latest date, August 29, 2006, when the final plat was finalized, signed. It is now in the county clerk's office. I am using as A1 a copy from my files. By the way, the engineer and surveyors of this was Robert Campbell Associates. So I personally was involved with the subdivision, creating the subdivision that is now, I believe they call White Lake Commerce Park, and initially it was referred to as White Lake Technical Center. The important aspects that I want to point out on A1 was that the concept of this development
was an overlap of efforts between the municipality, the property owner, or the developer. In 2003, it was recognized that much of the ED zone was being developed with sites that had to incorporate their own stormwater on site. And this was, one, using valuable land, which could be used for more intense development on each of these properties. And two, it was leading to possibly the need for additional variance relief for other aspects of the properties. Similar to your application you had here before, I'm not certain if that address rings a bell. It may be a site I designed, which was previously here when it was the original design. I had done numerous sites throughout Wilson Drive, Gale Court, and the like. And as we were pursued what was the good approach to develop this property, it was previously a sand and gravel operation. It was brought down to a flat grade, almost like an airstrip down the center. And the objective was determined between, I believe it was Charlie Ryan, Mr. Simmons, myself as engineers, David Trost, and the senator, who was pursuing a vision of having sites that didn't necessarily have to be large lots, but could still sustain what was a desirable site as a commercial facility for the needs of what they saw Gale Court, Commerce, and Park Drive. So this final subdivision resulted in the various lots that you see up and down Aaron Way, and more significantly, what was Lot 9, the back right corner of the cul-de-sac as we look at it, the 3.8 acre lot was designated to be a regional stormwater basin. And this regional stormwater basin was to be turned over to the town so that the town could manage and be responsible for the maintenance of this basin. The value of that was that the development in that particular basin was in close proximity to the wellheads that supply the water system, and by managing the storm water, the town, in conjunction with a private developer, could have a good plan to better manage the quality of stormwater going into the ground and the maintenance of that basin, while at the same time, at the cost of this lot, having a more intense development on each of these lots that were then subdivided to conforming lot sizes, and as you see the subdivision throughout. So that would be essentially the total of A1. The other thing to point out was that this is more or less the last strip of land in the ED zone. As you go down White Lake Road, after this development, you now have the recreational facilities. Those recreational facilities on vast tracts of land, which have very little impervious cover on them, predominantly large tracts of pervious land, again, on a soil base that was prior soil removal operation, sand and gravel. And this is important because of the nature of the water quality and the treatment of stormwater as it goes back into the ground, which is now all done regionally for the most part on that right rear lot, which is adjacent to the railroad strip and adjacent to the wellheads. One additional important fact, as the cooperation is emphasized between the municipal and the private development, there is also a water main easement that was given from the property owner, the developer, to the municipality. This water main provides for a water line that was required by the DEP as part of the water service that goes from the water facility, Lot 6, and has conveyance back to the lake. So someplace in one of the approvals, I don't know the particulars to it, but the municipality was required to actually put water back as some kind of balancing act with the groundwater mounding or groundwatering analysis that the DEP had done for the draw of those wells that were on that Lot 6. That's the extent of my knowledge of that, is that I coordinated and had the easement set up through the property in order to facilitate the needs of the municipality's water system. What I'd like to go to next is A2. A2 is a 30 by 42 foot sheet, so excuse the fact I folded it up so I could only get to the important stuff on an easel that would be manageable. And A2 is sheet 501 of the preliminary subdivision for that Aaron Way. The title reads Road Plan and Profile, Preliminary Subdivision, White Lake Technical Center, original date February 2003, and it has revision dates through 2003, but more important, it has revision dates of 2018 as well. So from 2003, the approvals were granted, the map was filed, the improvements were bonded, but until 2018, it was never constructed. So in 2018, when it was going to be constructed, the stormwater aspects were redesigned in order to address the stormwater regulations as they existed in 2018. The importance for me tonight and for the applicant and for all of the properties that were developed on Aaron Way is emphasizing again that lot that was dedicated for the regional stormwater basin. You can note the size of that basin. The basin has the access for maintenance, it's fenced, it's enclosed, and in the 2018 design, it was actually able to discharge into a neighboring basin, which further provides additional water quality treatment, which again is the most important aspect of all interest for the stormwater issues. With A2, I would like to recite some of the notes that you see highlighted as they're going to result and have an impact on tonight's application, and more or less the reason why I felt it necessary to bring this presentation portion to the board. And on the top left side of A2, it indicates that the first catch basin on each lot shall have a sump maintained by the lot owner. The drainage and stormwater basin is designed to provide for 50% impervious on all lots, emphasizing that the way this site was developed, by having a regional basin, the intent of the division was to allow up to 50% impervious cover, having more intense development on the property because it had already mitigated the stormwater and managed to use the smaller lot, sustain the same development as a larger lot may, while at the same time, you have a 3.8 acre lot that's not being constructed and has no impervious cover on it. I emphasize that too, that the access drive in is a porous pavement section. It's not an impervious pavement section. Additionally, to note the combination of effort between the municipality and the private sector, there's additional notes that talk to the maintenance of these catch basins on each of these sites. And it references how the property owner or the building manager must maintain and pump those septic or those stormwater basins that have the sump in them and do cleaning of their stormwater catch basins on site 2 times a year, and then provide this cleaning records to the municipality. That is a condition of the major subdivision that was approved in 2018. And as you look at what the water quality importance in Sparta is lying on this aquifer that we are, every design rotates around designing to protect the aquifer that we ride on with this development and others in the region. This issue will require the Barringer Corp to twice a year have those stormwater basins, catch basins, cleaned and provide documentation that is cleaned and whatever is cleaned out of the basin is disposed with the proper tipping fee receipt. That is a requirement of the subdivision. That's a requirement that we're obligated to, and I emphasize that to the board as we move on with describing the site plan.
Mr. Campbell, if I could, those 2 exhibits, do you have any extra copies that we could give to our engineering and planner?
But you mean right now?
Sometime when
I
you're
was going to
finished.
leave them with Ms. Fox
Okay,
as the exhibits.
okay.
Mr. Simmons was there in 2018 with us. Would you like me to provide it?
No, go, finish what you're doing, and we'll figure it out as we go.
Very good. So what I'll mark next is A3. A3 is the site plan sheet as it's been resubmitted after your various professionals have reviewed the plan. I'm marking it as an exhibit because I've highlighted it in order to recognize where the specific revisions were made from the original submission through to the resubmissions of strictly this sheet that addressed Mr. Simmons' comments and your planner's comments that came obviously after the initial submission. The sheet, which is being identified as A3, is the site plan sheet. It reads Lot 5, Block 16003 for Behringer Corp., 10 Aaron Way, original date of November 2023, and the significant revision dates since it was initial submission, 6/10/24 per Mr. Simmons' report, and 6/25/24 per your planner's report. The highlighted emphasis in yellow is the engineering. The highlighted emphasis in the green are those changes to the site that were made as a result of the report from your planner. So as we look at the site, which I described earlier as the 2.2 acres property, the property is located at the intersection of Aaron Way and Park Lake Road and is to the westerly side of that Park Lake Road. So as we look at Aaron Way, we're proposing an entrance offsetting that road intersection, and we're proposing an entrance to our site at the furthest distance from that intersection as reasonable, which is a safety aspect to offset our entrance to that of the road intersection. We have designed this entrance and exit to get to a point where it's approximately 75 feet into the property, where it will be a two-way entrance, and the only parking space that will be in front of the building along Aaron Way will be that of a handicap stall, which will provide the most ready access for the handicap to the building entrance, which will be where the welcome offices and the like for this facility. The building size that's being proposed is 85 feet by 215 feet. It is meeting all the required setbacks of the zone. With the site design at that entrance location I described earlier, it will also lend itself as being a fire access lane to get to that first point of the corner of the building. The fire review has been made. The plan was revised to reference a no parking fire lane designation that will be painted on the entranceway. The building will be sprinklered. Adjacent to that, we have the two water lines noted. One is the potable water coming off the main that is already valved. And then the second will be the secondary line, which will be secondary service for the sprinkler system. Again, your Public Works Department has reviewed this. We had that review for the septic when we obtained the septic permit, which has been issued by the County of Sussex. The review of the Water Department, which has, again, given the letter and recognized that with the water service being available for what we're proposing. The Fire Department review. We do have a soil erosion sediment control certification for when the construction should proceed. As we come in the property off of Aaron Way, we go to a one-way access strip on the right side of the building or to the west. And we have parallel parking, which will be obviously both sides of that entranceway. There'll be the applicable signage to deter traffic from going wrong way from both entrance and exits on the other way, which I'll describe, the entrance coming off of Park Lake. And as we come in off Aaron Way, we'll be able to come in with any type of vehicle. This is designed to handle any truck, straight truck, tractor trailer, and/or garbage truck. So the design has ready circulation for the truck, which can come in predominantly through Aaron Way. They're going to be signed and told to come in here so that the trucks are monitored as they come into the site. The other access to the property and exit to the property is on what's called the southerly side of the property as it fronts on Park Lake Road. Again, the driveway is pushed as far from the intersection as feasible. Both of these driveways are in locations that are safe with the site distance and access. Both entrances are designed to have ready flexibility for truck turns and the like. And this particular access will be a two-way entrance. It'll facilitate any of the intended employee parking or the parking that's required to meet the ordinance. The access also provides perpendicular parking up towards the building, parallel parking on the south side of the lot that adjacent to the CP Engineering's building. Then you have 2 garage access points, which the use and operations of those will be described later by the operations manager. The 1 garage door, which is closest to the west, is also adjacent to where we have additional parking with EV-ready spaces being proposed. These parking spaces include handicap spaces as well in order to accommodate the required handicap stall count relevant to the overall count, which currently is now 41 spaces as a total. That 41 spaces was reduced from 42 as a result of accommodating certain comments that were needed to be addressed in the revised plans. 41 spaces still meets the required parking by ordinance that of what we're proposing. The second garage access door is larger in nature. The islands were intentionally cut short and the cross-hatching being painted in order to provide beyond ready access for trucks, so that if the truck's not making a perfect turn, he's not jumping curbs. We also have parking that is more or less perpendicular to the access of the garage door, and we note that 1 or 2 of these parking spaces will be inconvenienced if there's a truck at the loading dock door. These are EV-ready spaces. It'll be an extra few minutes for the car to charge, basically, if they have to wait for a truck to leave. It will be controlled, predominantly employee parking, and it can be told internally by the management as far as any inconvenience these parking spaces may create because of the truck parked in front of them.
Mr. Campbell, if I can with the rain, if you could talk a little bit closer into the mic, I think it would
I'll
help.
try to do that.
Thank you.
Hopefully, everything
Glad we're
I
inside.
said so far was loud and clear. The only other aspect on the site that I should make reference to in conjunction with the rear of the building is that of the dumpster enclosure, which is tucked away in the back corner or the back right corner as you look at it from Aaron Way. It's remote from view. It's hidden in the back, so to speak, as we would like the dumpster to be. And it's designed in a location where the garbage truck can load either front or rear. So historically, with the dumpsters, we've had a design. Is it a back load garbage truck or a front load garbage truck? In this particular case, we designed for both, and either can facilitate access to this dumpster location. If it's the front, they need the K-turn, they have the loading area to make the K-turn. And I've demonstrated as a response to one of the reports, an exhibit with truck turn patterns and demonstrate that tractor trailer can readily take this garage door, all the trucks and the garbage truck can readily access any of the garage doors and turn and motion without obstruction. The other feature that we're designing is we're proposing a rain garden between Aaron Way and the proposed building. And we're doing this for various reasons. One is that the current stormwater rules would like to see as much sheet flow and overland water travel from motor vehicle surfaces, as they phrase it. And in this particular case, as you come in the drive off of Aaron Way, we're proposing a section of flush curb. This curb strictly flush, not depressed, which sticks out of the ground 1.5 inches, but actually flush so that the snowplow can readily push snow through that curb line. You'll note that we do not put our proposed sign 25 feet off the road, which would be a desirable location. We actually put it at 35 feet. And we put that sign at 35 feet so that the area in front of the sign is clear. So when the truck comes through to plow, it has an area to push the snow without having to interfere and hit the sign, so to speak. It also allows the snow to get off the curb line, get into the area where it's supposed to melt down, and then go into the rain garden, which will be a landscape feature in the front of the building. Again, the rain garden provides additional water quality treatment. As we've known it over the past 3 to 4 years now, the rain garden has been a more customary water quality device. The site is being lit and illuminated with your typical LED lights throughout. There's information on the lighting plan. I suspect we may get into more detail at a later date. As far as the lighting, hours of operation, and the operations in itself, I did have a facilities report that will comment to the hours of operation, the number of employees, but I think that may be best addressed by the operations manager. And I believe the next aspect that should be covered off of A3 would be the freestanding sign that we have not touched base. But I did comment as to its location being 35 feet as opposed to 25 feet. And this freestanding sign is diagrammed in the bottom left corner of A3. I believe the diagram speaks for itself. It's got like a stone monument face going to it. It has 2 light bars which will uplight it and not allow discretionary flood type of light. It'll be a subtle light bar that just illuminates it from the bottom coming off the monument. The monument is proposed to be 7 feet front to back, 8.6 feet high to the plate, and the base of that sign will be some 4 feet. The width front to back will be 3.2 feet. Again, the sign will be located at that location, 35 feet from the right-of-way, and you'll see in the landscape plan that there'll be significant landscape proposed around the base of that sign. What I have on the easel is the landscape plan, which was the second round of plans that was submitted to the board. This landscape plan demonstrates the amount of planting that is being proposed primarily to offset that section in the ordinance where it's a percentage of planting versus percentage impervious. In addition to that, we believe we've exceeded that ratio with this planting scheme. And as you see coming in off of Aaron Way, there's additional shade trees, part of what the Aaron Way proposal incorporated, shade trees along Aaron Way. We cannot plant trees down at the intersection where we have site triangle easement. The rain garden has the perimeter with plantings, and we also will be putting applicable plantings in the rain garden itself. The sign as designated has significant plant beds around the sign as noted. The perimeter of the parking lot has numerous plantings that go through the entire perimeter property line, right sideline as you're looking from Aaron Road, and the rear lot adjacent to CP Engineers. Against the building on the Park Lake Road, there's an extensive amount of plantings that run along that face of that building. One of the comments was to break up the face of the building. What's now proposed is a significant number of plantings as well as 5 trees that are proposed to obviously mature in time. And as they mature in time, the landscape becomes more enhanced. But these trees are proposed to basically break up the lower end of that building in the appearance, which was a comment that we took and responded to. Likewise, more plantings along the back of the building, plantings paralleling the entire front of the building. So essentially, the entire building is perimeter with plantings. The plantings are intended to basically enhance the view of that lengthy building as you may look at it from a perspective, yet relevant to the lot and relevant to other buildings in the development. This is typical in the size of the building we're proposing, relevant to the lot size that we're working with. Plantings around the dumpster, the various evergreen plantings, the various buffer plantings. So as you can see by the planting scheme, there are significant plantings proposed in this particular planting act. Specific brands, I can't comment to what the actual plants are, but I can comment that if we know Farmside, we've seen their product around, and Farmside does a very attractive planting job when it's done. That's what I can tell you about the landscape plan and the nature of how much planting is being proposed to accommodate those aspects of your ordinance as a percentage of the impervious cover, which is the ratio that the ordinance calls for. I believe I've covered with presentation the primary aspects of the site design, the history of the subdivision. I don't know procedurally if you want to go through reports at this time or if you wanted me to comment on some of the other reports that came in that I did respond to, such as the Environmental Commission, or whether we go to the professional reports that are here now. I leave that to your discretion and what your procedure would prefer.
Why don't we, So you're going to testify to the environmental report as well? What other aspects will you be testifying to?
Well, the environmental report that I received and I did a response to the environmental report. And my response was primarily recognizing the zone that they referenced we were designated in when they looked under the Highland planning aspects of things. And our findings in this application were that we were in what they referred to as the existing community zone, contrary to what we saw in the environmental report. And the existing community zone consists of the areas with regionally significant concentrated development, significantly existing communities, developments signifying existing communities. These areas tend to have limited environmental constraints due to previous development patterns and may have existing infrastructure that can support development and redevelopment, provided that such development is compatible with the protection and character of the Highlands environment. That is a quote from the Highlands ECZ zone, which I believe, from my research on it, and I presented this in the response application, that's where we lie. And it would make sense, which is why I thought it was important to identify that this property was a soil removal operation. It was a sand and gravel dump in the 90s and the late 80s, i.e. redeveloped. It is specifically cited in an area surrounded by development, which has all the facilities and the utility to support the development. The road infrastructure, the utilities, the electrical, the water service, and the soils that are very compatible for the septic as well. So that is where my concern was about the Environmental Commission report that tended to have a recommendation that I felt needed to come to the board, because it's my opinion from researching what we've confined in the Highlands information, that we are in fact in the ECZ zone, which is actually cited for what we're proposing.
Okay, anything else that you'd like to give testimony to, or
I think
open up
we're,
to questions at this point?
well, to the reports or question, whichever you would like to proceed.
Maybe the reports, he's saying that he can comment on Dave and
Mr. Simmons reports.
Dave Simmons' report.
Right. So, you want to comment on it, or should we go to good questions of Mr. Simmons, or what's the best way to do it? I guess,
Mr.
if
Chairman,
if you got comments you want to make before we go to questions, why don't we do that?
I would think that it'd be appropriate for Mr. Simmons to go through his report at this time, because if I haven't previously covered it in my testimony, I can respond to it.
Yep, that's where I was going, okay.
That's right, Mr.
Yep,
Chairman?
yep.
Okay. Just referring to the report I prepared dated June 6, 2024. As you go through the report, Mr. Campbell has commented on several of the issues. I'll just highlight a couple. Again, with regards to the plans and the exhibits that he's mentioned tonight, there were a couple iterations where some of the comments in here have been addressed on the revisions. And specifically, I'll look on page 2 under zoning, where we talked about 4-foot minimum setback from the sidewalk to the parking areas, 8-foot in other areas, parking areas up next to the building, and some of this, going over to page 3, some of the sizes of the parking spaces, 9 by 20, where some spaces were only 9 by 18 and needed a waiver. Perhaps Mr. Campbell, and I'm sorry if I missed it, could just highlight what he changed on there to address that.
And exactly why I felt this would be appropriate, because it's one item that I erred in not covering.
All right.
So our original approach with this property was to use 10 by 18s or 9 by 18 parking stalls. And it was pointed out that that would take special relief. It was also noted in Mr. Simmons' report the offset to the sidewalk. So in those areas that were relevant, we altered the sidewalk setback from the curb line to make it comply. We widened the sidewalk in certain locations in order to address better circulation when we are, say, parallel parking. When parallel parking, we would want the sidewalk at the curb line, not offset from the curb line. So if that takes a waiver, I don't know that parallel parking is applicable compared to the perpendicular parking. The perpendicular parking we have offset, and we provided a 4-foot walk and offset it 4 feet from the curb. We've also modified this parking lot in the later response, which took it and made it 20-foot stalls, so we no longer have the issue of the 18-foot stalls. Historically, we had designed through the ED zone a variety of different parking spaces, and basically people that work, whatever they drive, they fit the parking spot to their needs. The 9x18s have historically been an approved site from past years. But recognizing that we did, and we made them 20 feet. These changes did not impact the original calculation, as certain changes offset others with the impervious cover calculation that was initially part of our application, which is the 48% and the variance, which we need to talk about in some time in this application. So when we took a sidewalk from 5 feet to 4 feet, it reduced that portion, but when we took a parking stall up, when we took a parking stall out, or when we moved the parking stall to accommodate another need, these things washed the impervious cover back and forth from our original application and notice for the 48%, yet it addressed the offset for the walkway, the parking lot sizes, the 4-foot walk when it's 5 feet or 4 feet off the curb line. That type of thing was done in the revised plans that the board is now reviewing.
Okay. On page 3 of the report, under the architectural plans, 2 questions just to address. An elevator shown bringing materials to the proposed mezzanine. Is there any emergency generator proposed for this site?
Yes, the emergency generator is noted to be in the rear by the second garage door. It'll be up against the building, it'll be in whatever applicable enclosure, and it'll be sized according to whatever mechanical needs it will be. The enclosure is typically done when it's a soundproof enclosure, and these generators are set up typically to where they will address any noise level requirements of the state, so that the emission of noise is buffered by the building. Any echo or any transmission is towards the CP engineer building, and that generator will have whatever design requirements for sound shielding that's applicable.
And on that same architectural plan comment, not sure if this is for the architect or for Mr. Campbell, but any HVAC units, are they ground mounted or building mounted on the roof?
These are going to be ground mounted, and again, in the back by the garage doors. They'll be against the building, on the opposite side of the garage access as that of the generator. So our mechanicals will be in the back of the building. They won't be visual from the roadway. And again, they'll be in the service area, i.e. the loading dock or the loading garage base.
Mr. Campbell went over the stormwater management pretty extensively. I did have a suggestion until we spoke earlier this week regarding an additional inlet and comment 7D. But as Mr. Campbell indicated, not a depressed curb, but a flush curb, so they could, in fact, plow that area. Where that comment came from, just so the board knows, we've run into this with the DOT on some applications where it may not have a curb section, but in the wintertime when they plow the snow and then the snowbank freezes, if there's a low area or place where it won't normally drain, where it normally sheet flows off, then you get into a situation where you have a potential icing situation. So they have us, under DOT vernacular, put in what they call a snow inlet. And that's where that comment came from. But Mr. Campbell came up with a note on the plan and the additional flush curb to address the same thing, which is acceptable to me.
Thank you.
The lighting plan, again, for security purposes, they've got the lights on from closing until 7 a.m. I don't know if there's any possibility of some of the lights being dimmed, as you heard in the previous application.
I suspect that these lights can be managed today. We can control the LED lights in many different ways. We'll adjust them to where there will be a safe light level in the evening, and the security lights will be dimmed to where they still function as security lights, but if possible, less than what you would normally need for your illuminated sidewalks.
Okay. Then going on to the water and sanitary sewer system, again, I believe the township water and sewer director has looked at everything in the county health department, and with regards to those items, including the building being sprinklered, I think Mr. Campbell's addressed that. With regards to signage, I didn't see anything that violated any township code that I'm aware of. especially the facade sign is not proposed to be illuminated, as I understand it. With regards to our landscaping comments, they did revise the plan from farm side to provide some additional landscaping, and our landscape architect will review that further. With regards to the environmental impact statement, perhaps under items 14A, B, and C, there could be a little additional testimony on that, primarily starting with item C, verify there's no floor drains in the proposed building.
There will be no floor drains in this building.
Okay. Item A, the applicant should outline the proposed activities that will take place. That may be Mr. Van Horn, I'm not sure.
That will be operations.
And B, the applicant to outline the materials that will be used and stored at the site to confirm no hazardous materials. Again, Mr. Van Horn, probably. I then, in item 15, recommended all the various permits that should be obtained, and as customary, I recommend that an as-built be prepared upon completion of the project if the board approves it, just to verify everything's completed in accordance with the conditions of any approval the board might consider. And that's my comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Martin?
I only have a handful of questions. I guess I'll start with something easy. So the landscape plan was updated. Looks like the date was, doesn't have a revision date. But the landscape plan was updated after the, at least after Mr. Simmons' review memo was issued, which did include notations on the plan to show conformance with the requirements under 18-5.3.01D. And then there are additional landscape requirements that were implemented as part of the ordinance update for the ED zone, which have, are mostly specific to the ED zone and a few other zones. And some of those requirements, my memo very generally requested the applicant note if they're in compliance with them. Because some of them do overlap with the regular landscaping requirements, but then there are other things that I think should be shown on the plans at least. My inkling is that they do comply with them because the landscape plan was updated in detail, but there's something like the landscape area ratio of 0.4, which is, it's not just landscaping, it's landscaping and ground cover contributes towards that. So it's very likely, because the impervious coverage is 48%, that means that the landscape area ratio is probably complied with. But that's something that should be added to the plans, any revised plans.
Except the board will make sure we comply.
Thank you. And there's a number of other not quantified requirements that are to the nature of native plantings, no use of exotic species and things like that. Looking at the planting schedule, it seems like we could probably fix some of those things up and maybe have some suggestions for native plantings. What I have run into when I've made this suggestion in other municipalities before other applicants is that sometimes they can be hard to come by. And so I'd recommend that if the board looks favorably upon this application, that we could work either through Reso compliance with myself or Mr. Simmons to make sure that the landscaping plan meets the intent and purpose of the ordinance as far as native plantings.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. As far as the revised plan, so my memo was based on the initial site plan that was from June 10th, or it's the first revision after Mr. Simmons' memo. And so I had noted that at the rear, some of the parking spaces adjacent to the loading did kind of present a conflict as far as travel, and Mr. Campbell did go over those in the updated plan after my review memo. So I just wanted to touch upon that because there was a revision to the plan which did take away the closest parking space in that row towards the building, and then just left 4 spaces there. They are left as EV spaces. I'm still not thrilled. That's not a technical term, but I think that there still probably are some conflicts. The truck turning plan does show that there's no issue navigating the site, but I do think anytime we could avoid or eliminate conflicts, we should. That's not to say that you should seek a parking variance or anything like that, but I guess my question is, you'd mentioned that these would likely be employee spaces. I think there's some employee spaces designated there. and there are,
There's, if I'm not clear, there's spaces that are specifically designated as employee spaces. So that we can control those locations. They're specific to where that cross-hatching is versus the curbing line. And if the space, I believe you're talking about, which would be space number 15.
correct.
Which is approximately 30 feet from the building, i.e. if a 35-foot straight truck is there, that space is obstructed. And if it's felt that it's inappropriate to have that space there, we could certainly move the space over by where 28 is.
I think it could be even easier, maybe, or maybe we're saying the same thing, is I would maybe, unless the wiring is, based on the engineering, if the wiring is there, intended to be there, then the EV spaces should be linked with that. But if you can move the wiring, I'd move the EV spaces and make those all an employee row of parking, because employees are likely going to be the ones who won't have issues needing to leave the site, whereas an EV might be for a visitor or someone who is not, doesn't know the schedule of deliveries and things like that. It may seem minor, but I think it's a way to avoid the conflict.
And I appreciate it, so what we can do is I will figure out a location to satisfy with the relocation of the EV charger, the future charger, and we'll make these employee spaces. I anticipated the EV space was actually going to be used by an employee.
Okay.
Many of the facilities we have, the employees go from one destination to another. And if they have the electric vehicle, it's an opportune time. You'll note that Barringer has their prime facility on Ridge Road, literally 2 minutes from my office off of Cook Road in Frankfort, New Jersey. And they have a facility over on Gale Court. So this will be their second Sparta facility. So if someone's coming, it's anticipated that if an employee's coming with an electric car from one facility, they will be the ones potentially putting the car on charge while they're going in for the 2 or 3 hours that they're at the facility.
Okay.
That's the intention why I was.
Leaving them next to the employee. Okay. With that, I will say that, the EV chargers are evolving over time. What I would recommend, if this board looks favorably upon this application, is that these spaces be not made public. There are many kind of apps and things like that which direct people to find chargers that are available. And what I would recommend is that they not made public, they be specific to the site and used only by employees or visitors of the site.
And I concur with that, encourage it, as we're not a service station on the highway.
Thank you. That's all I have for the engineer. Thank you.
Okay, great. I want to start down this end.
I'm good with my questions.
Not at this time. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. You mentioned the twice annual water basin testing. Who's responsible for that testing?
That's a cleaning. Like the stormwater basins, the inlet structures themselves
Yeah.
have what they call a sump in the bottom of the catch basin. The sump traps all the litter and suspended solids that go from the driveway into the catch basin. This is basically a chamber at the bottom, like a 5-gallon or 10-gallon bucket in the bottom of the catch basin, for lack of a better description. And the owner has to retain a company that comes out with a vacuum truck and service the inlet twice a year. That is a requirement of the original subdivision.
Okay, and then so it's an outside company that does this, and the report goes to the municipality? Okay, got it. Thank you. What are the hours of operation? Did we say?
Mr. Van Horn will
Okay,
speak about.
okay, that's fine, thank you. And then is the EV charging station make-ready, or will you actually have one?
Make ready at this.
Okay, so what's that, like 3.5 years from now? How does that work again?
When you build this facility,
Mm-hmm,
you basically put the conduit in place, ready to service the unit when it goes in. And so basically electrical, like you're doing the site lighting and you run the conduit out, when you do the EV spaces, you'll run conduit to those designated locations. And the conduit stays there until it's time to put the unit itself in.
so is that, how long does that take?
Well, the state model ordinance for EV is very generous in that I think it gives up to like 3 to 5 years to make them actually usable.
Okay, and is there one, or was there more than one?
They have 4
Proposed?
spaces.
4, okay, thank
There's
you.
only a percentage that have to be even make ready. Some can just be future entirely, but because the site is fresh, they're just going to put in the conduit now, it seems, to make them make ready. But the state ordinance is quite liberal.
Right. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
So if an employee had an EV vehicle, at this time, they wouldn't be able to plug it in? It would be 3 to 4 years down the road?
That's, at this point, they would be strictly ready, not able to plug in. If we had an employee, can speak, and if I get contradicted, I'll live with it. But I would suspect if there's numerous employees that have EV vehicles, that one will be made
Sooner
ready
than later.
to fit the need. At this point, the number of EV vehicles used when you're in Branchville, Frankfurt, and traversing back and forth to Sparta is very low in the numbers that are currently out there. So the demand for it is not as good. What I am recommending to my clients is delay it. If you need one, go with one, but delay it as long as the state will allow, because just in the last 2 years, the units, the charging units, have become, every year they're outdated.
They're obsolete, yeah.
And currently, the model we like to use is a simple 6-inch front to back unit. So when you install it, it doesn't obstruct the sidewalk. And they need to be installed by the curb line, not at the back of the sidewalk, because now you have a trip. So at the curb line, 2 years ago, it was a larger unit and obstructed the sidewalk. Now it's a 6-inch unit. If you have a 6-foot sidewalk or a 5-foot sidewalk, you still have plenty of room to pass behind the EV unit. So I'm encouraging this delay because the units are getting better and better every year.
All electronics. All right, thank you. Your testimony was very thorough. I really don't have any other questions.
Well, Mr. Campbell, you'll be happy about this. We'll be back because he still has planning testimony to give it.
Mr. Campbell, one question I had, I was unclear looking at the drawing. So are all the spaces now 9 by 20s, or are there any 9 by 18s being
There are
proposed?
no more 9 by 18s.
Okay, thank you.
Majority are 9 by 20s. Some are 10 by 20s. And then some are actually in the parallel parking. We're using that Penn State parking where you have 10, 10, 5, 10, 10, 5. And it's actually 12-foot wide on this parallel parking. Anticipating those trucks that may park there after they've unloaded and done whatever business before they go back to Branchville.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Campbell, you're, like Joan mentioned, that your testimony was very thorough. I just want to confirm 2 things. One, the fire lane, you did say that you're going to maintain that based on the fire marshal's recommendation?
The fire marshal's final recommendation is that we stripe on both sides the fire lane designation at the entrance for the first 75 feet, I think it was, by memory, was 65 or 75 feet.
54?
Okay, 54 feet. He's going from the right-of-way line in, I'm going from the curb line. So that is going to be up to the front of the building, and it's going to be designated as the fire lane. It'll be painted as such. It is not the lane going all the way through.
And Mr., you did mention that you did meet with the Director of Utilities on site?
No, we had communications with the utility. We have multiple correspondence. When I first designed and got the septic approval, your utility, your water company reviewed it and had approved the septic and the water service. Later on, they reviewed the site plan, and then there was a second comment about it, missing the fact that I'd already gotten the septic. And then they corrected that statement and concur with what we're proposing with the water service.
How long do you expect the project to be for construction?
To start construction or to take for duration of time?
The duration of the construction project?
We would hope it would be less than a year.
And are you going to speak later to building materials and the architectural design, or someone else?
We have the architect who will be presenting.
And the same to be later testimony for activities within the building?
Yeah, business operations, we have Mr.
I guess I'll
Vandermark.
have you.
Just a quick question. The garage doors, the loading dock areas, are there entrances adjacent to or nearby that? I wasn't able to. Looks like there's 2, right?
The garage door having man doors adjacent to
Yeah.
them? I'll have to defer that to the architect. But my anticipation is that there'll be man doors readily available in proximity. I know there's a man door at the first door here,
Yeah.
and I'm uncertain as to whether there's a man door at the second garage door
I
because it
was
is
just-
close in proximity to the.
And if so, if it's confirmed, is there any bollards or safety measures protecting that?
In this particular case, the primary entrance door to the back, which is adjacent to the garage, there's a sidewalk and a curb.
Yeah.
Which offsets it, so I don't believe the bollard's appropriate. And actually, I'm sorry, I've got to stand corrected. My site plan does designate where the man door is, which is approximately, maybe 15 feet or 10 feet off of that garage to the right of the generator.
Gotcha.
So
All
that
right.
man door will be the sidewalk out to those lower parking spaces.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your thorough presentation. And I am the liaison from the Environmental Commission, and so I'm looking at your response and what we wrote to you, and I'm comparing the information. So in regards to the variance request, you are aware that this property that you're seeking to develop sits on top of the headwaters of two watersheds. So you're aware that it sits directly on top of the Wallkill and the Pollenskill, and that it is adjacent to a critical wildlife habitat area that is designated. And I'm also referring to the integrated report from the Highlands. It's funny how we can look at a site and we can glean, such different information. So I just wanted to point that out, that it has a riparian integrity score of high. And in both of those areas for the Wallkill and the Pollenskill. And that 84.3% of the selected area is still designated as critical wildlife habitat area, perhaps endangered or a corridor, is what they're talking about. And that it is within a 300-meter buffer of vernal pools. And that underlying all of that wonderful gravel and glacial deposits that is almost as good as plants in filtering and recharging our aquifer, we're talking about carbonate rock areas. And they're limited in what they can do to remove pollutants. So, the land management area, total of 1.3 acres or 58.1%. And we're in agreement that it is within a lake management area. In your report, you say that you believe that this lot is within the existing community zone. I'd like to go on more than just belief and actually find out,
Well,
where it is.
when I
where
refer
it
to
is
my belief,
designated.
it's the mapping that we had put in as the exhibit in response.
Okay,
And recognizing that zone, that was the zone I quoted earlier. And in regards to that, those points you bring out, they're important to all of Sparta and they're appreciated. And why I introduced this whole application tonight, starting with 2003, when this concern was brought forth. And I went through 2003 and the story of the subdivision and creating these lots for this use, specifically to emphasize how back in 2003, the municipality, the applicant, and later in 2018, the municipality and the applicant recognized these certain conditions that you bring forth. And by doing the subdivision the way they did and proposing the development on these lots to this intensity, they felt they were addressing it and best addressing those environmental concerns while at the same time providing a need for the industrial and commercial developments that are in the ED zone and recognizing that this is the end of the ED zone as you go from Demorest Road through 15, all the way through Park Lake Road until you hit the recreational fields.
Right.
And they took those aspects into consideration when they pursued this regional basin approach.
Right, but since then, I think we know a lot more about how we need to take care of the environment, and we have a lot of changes, such as climate changes and weather changes, that we were not really addressing in policies. So I've heard your testimony about the catchment basins, for instance, just as an example, that these are regional and they can take so much water from all of these different developments you've made along the Erin Way and supposedly cleanse it and then recharge our aquifers. But the fact of the matter is that nothing cleanses water as well as glacial deposits and the plants that are now, the poplar trees that are now, I drove by there today, growing on this lot 1616001, lot 5. Okay, so, and in each one of those properties that are along Erin Way, there's been an allowance of a variance, 10%, 18% more than 40%. And now we're continuing that pattern all through the ED zone at the expense of one of our most precious resources. And you don't know that there's a problem until it's too late with those catchment basins. So I cast doubt on their ability to do what nature can do, right up against White Lake, right underneath where the two major aquifers meet, the Wallkill and the Pollenskill. You know, it's just again and again variances and variances in that area. Why not just go with 40% and cut a little bit of your, impervious surface? Okay, so this is what I see happening. We have different perspectives. I know, I can tell by your design and your landscaping and your care of making sure that natural plantings are placed in rain garden. I even read something about a rain roof, excuse me. But I just don't see that taking the place of protecting our aquifer, our Germany Flats aquifer, which is an NJDEP community water protection area, those wellheads there. And how far is the new development from a wellhead, a protected wellhead? Aren't they supposed to be like 300 feet from a wellhead? And how far is this development from that?
Any other questions?
I can answer if you like.
I would love to know the answer because I couldn't find it today.
Well, what I'm going to refer to is A2. And I do thank you for those comments because they are what we went through in 2003. And we revisited in 2018 with your municipal engineer, your board engineer, your board planner. And we recognized these aspects when this was developed in a sense, recognizing that we're surrounded by development and this is the end of it. As you go Erin Way is the end of the ED zone. And this is where this scheme came up to make it regional. Let them, instead of building another site, another 1.5 acre impervious on the pond site, distribute that throughout the other lots and allow them to have it. To answer your question, A2 has some of the piezometer tubes and the monitoring wells over in the proximity of the water company lot. And I'm making reference this as the monitoring wells, because whether it's a monitoring well or the potable water well, it's still a well. And bear with me, make sure I get the correct scale. We are approximately 600 feet from those monitoring wells on Lot 6 to the corner of the property on White Lake Road, or Park Lake Road. So going from the monitoring well to that corner. So I understand the 300 foot, we are significantly further. One of the reasons that this lot was selected was because of its proximity to that, recognizing your concerns.
Let's see. You said in one of your responses that the lots along Aaron Way, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 14, 18, 19, 20, and 21, all have more than 40% of impervious cover. I just wanted to verify that with you.
That's correct.
That's, okay.
Every one of these lots developed within this subdivision were exceeding 40%. And that was established at the initial subdivision as the intention of this subdivision being able to have more intense development on each
I
property.
understand.
I summarized that chart in response to your planner's report, and I felt it important that the board understand this is the way this development was initially designed, and it was the intention of the development as a cooperative means between the public offices and the private developer.
Okay, and that,
I might note, sorry, but this
Okay.
48% is the least out of all the properties developed.
okay. But there are some that have like 18% impervious cover also within that. I'm just verifying that with you.
On Park Lake Road or on Aaron Way?
I don't know, I don't have your list with me, but it's,
My list cites lot 14, 18, 19, 20, 21, 1 and 2 combined, 3 and 4 combined. And the lowest one of the bunch that are on Aaron Way is lot 21, which is 48.2%.
okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, all right, well, I think that you've answered my questions, and I do understand your scheme for capturing the runoff. But again, I think that, and you know also that there's no way, if the aquifers here become damaged, that you can pump water out of the ground and clean aquifers. They're trying to do that in the west now. You can't clean them once they're degraded, right? You realize that.
That's a
Okay.
aspect beyond my expertise, and I couldn't comment to it.
I wish we could, but once the deed is done, that's it. And also, you know, there's a lot of accumulation here of variances through time. And I hope your idea works.
The state of New Jersey believes it does in their BMPs.
They've been
Gotta be
wrong
the best
before.
Practices of stormwater rules.
Okay, thank you, though.
I think that leads right into my question of, with the whole stormwater management plan you described there, I know the big thing right now is the new state standards.
Yes.
Sparta's been a town that's been under the higher standards.
Good.
You know, they're not one of the ones that got added, thrown into it, that are dealing with it. But I guess my question is, all of these, all the stuff you have with the cleanouts, the twice a year, the way the basin's maintained, all that conforms with the new stormwater standards from the state.
And the most current.
Right.
With what we're proposing is not just 2018, but my analysis and my stormwater report takes into consideration the July 2023 standards
That was my question, yes.
and the rainfall intensity curve factors that are applied.
I appreciate your guys' attention to detail. No questions for me.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have one quick question. I hope it's a quick question. So, with regard to Ms. Dunbar's point with the variances, the one lot that you used for the recharge, that 40% that would have been used if it were to be developable when this was originally planned, what was the square footage on that that could have been used at that point?
Of 3.8 acres?
Correct.
I'd be perfectly honest with you, I didn't calculate.
Okay, so my question then becomes, with all the variances that have been given over time, is there any calculation as to how much additional impervious coverage has been given to the rest of the complex? And is that less than what the impervious coverage would have been on that site at that point?
So exactly what this chart would do, that I summarized in response to the report, every lot was designated at 50% impervious
Okay.
in the design of the pond.
Mhm.
So if a lot was designed at 48, it didn't use its full allocation. If a lot used 49, it did not use its full allocation.
Correct, but if a lot was developed at 58, it used well over.
So if a lot was designed at 57%, as was lot 14, they did an additional stormwater basin in order to accommodate the additional percentage.
On their site?
On their site specifically,
So if
okay.
you go directly opposite, go to lot 14. Lot 14 is 57% impervious. And they had the stormwater basin paralleling Park Lake, and I believe a portion of it paralleling Aaron Way. So they did additional stormwater basin and additional stormwater mitigation on their own property for that extra 7%.
Okay,
Likewise,
so, I'm sorry, so just to kind of recap, so there has been no diminishment of those two basins in that one lot for the entirety of the complex. The recharge has been good since this was constructed from the beginning.
meeting the allocation of each lot and using.
Not just I mean, the water recharge in the current and active basins has been fine, and there's been no issues since it was constructed.
I had on that particular base, on the regional basin, was when CP was doing the review, CP Engineers, was doing the review for the compliance. And
Okay.
Mr. Owen Dykstra was working with Mr. Berardi, who built it, and dealing with the as-built conditions and satisfying the as-built requirements of the basin to the satisfaction of Mr. Clark, who represents CP Engineers.
I'm sorry, what year was that again? Okay. Just trying to make a differentiation between 2003, 2018, 2021, 2024. There's been a lot of back and forth.
Somewhere around 2019, 20.
Okay.
And the stormwater basin was there and was not perfected and turned over for the maintenance to the town until after Mr. Owen Dykstra, BD, working for Anthony Berardi, developer, had done the as-built certification, and they had waited until the road construction, the majority of the lots were constructed,
Okay.
so that any adverse impacts of siltation that ran off were cleaned out of the pond and set up for turnover to the town. Although the property had previously been turned over to the town 20 years ago. And this was again done through the supervision of at that time township engineer, CP Engineers.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sorry, I don't have the exact date.
No, that's fine. We're good.
Just one clarification. We keep referring to the way the subdivision was designed and approved. I don't think a copy of the plat was included. I think the resolution was included from the 2003 approval, 2006 approval, I'm sorry. Did the plat specify that impervious coverage?
The final.
The 50%, the intent, keep saying there's an intention that each of the lots would be developed to 50%, which is, was it approved as part of the subdivision on the plat, or was the stormwater basin simply designed to that level?
The subdivision was approved that it maintained the 40% impervious cover, otherwise we wouldn't be here for a variance. So,
Okay.
so the subdivision kept the ED zone requirement.
Okay.
So that every lot as it got developed was able to come to this board, and this board would be the regulator to make sure that if they went over 50%,
Oh.
they were controlling the 50%. Or if they were looking at something where there was adverse impacts along the way in history, that they
Okay.
could correct at that time. So the ordinance or the requirements under the major subdivision had some deviation from the ED zone, such as rear yards.
Yes, and the,
Notice-
the
notice-
75-foot, yeah, setback.
You notice a distinction between the ED zone and this particular subdivision.
Correct.
So there were certain aspects about this major subdivision that were recognized to be unique to the land. And they were incorporated in the zone requirements for the subdivision.
Yes.
There was a decision by those professionals I made reference to many times to keep it at 40%.
Got
So
it,
that
okay.
we had this situation, so that every applicant that came in here
So the
had
storm,
to go through the necessary proofs to settle.
wonderful, that answers my question. So basically, the stormwater basin was over-designed just in case.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to do, open up to the public, and then after that, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break if we can. So is any questions from the public relative to the testimony given? Okay, so seeing none, why don't we take a 10-minute break? The one thing I probably should have mentioned at the beginning, so we've got a bunch of stuff we have to get through tonight, including we've got to get through, we have an executive session, and we have, I want to make sure we have time for public comment and some updates. So the plan was to end testimony at 9:30 tonight. And then we could just, I will have to set up a plan for a follow-on meeting or something like that, okay? Okay, thank you.
Horn, how long have you been with the company? What is your title? What is your role and responsibility?
Okay, just a quick thing. I've started on February 7th of 2000, came in as a welding supervisor. After 3 months, became production manager, which then evolved into operations manager. So working on my 25th year.
Is that microphone on?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it is.
Maybe just tap the head, I want to make sure.
There we go.
There we go. Thank
That's
you.
better?
Better.
Thank you.
Want to start over? Or?
No, that was fine.
Okay.
And your role and responsibility?
As operations manager now, I have responsibility of everybody out of the office, basically. So I have 24 employees. So at our 17 Ridge Road building, I have manufacturing and warehousing. So all those employees, we have job descriptions, we're family owned. So that is all my responsibility, making our part. With a quick note, Behringer, its name itself has been in business since 1864. Up until this day, there's only been 2 owners throughout that company, so the existing family of today. So that's pretty impressive to have a company that long and only that many owners. We're in a 3rd generation right now going through. So again, to have business lasting that long and evolving. I came aboard and we're doing extremely well, me as a new person into the company, and we just continually to grow though every day. So I've seen 25 years of growth. I keep going to the owner and say, look, we need more space, we need more space. And we came up with the building that we own at 22 Gale Court. That was a new building that was built in 2000. The Tuke company built that. We bought that from them. I say and inherited a tenant. That was the Miller brothers. So Sparta, 2 young wrestlers, built their business. They have a tenant there. But we continue to grow and we need space. And that's why we're looking to put up the next building so I can expand our warehousing together to be able to make room for my manufacturing to make that more efficient.
So that's a good segue. Why don't you describe for the board briefly sort of what Behringer does, what it is they do, what you plan to do in this space?
Sure.
And generally the operations of how this space will work.
Okay, Behringer is a manufacturer of our own component, and it's a pipe support clamp. So everybody here would get a chance to see it. If you see a backhoe, an excavator, skid loader, it has hydraulic systems on it. So either hoses or steel tubing, and our clamps are what's in place securing these lines. You could go to farming equipment, and there's chances are that our equipment is on there. Our clamps are holding that equipment together. Goes through all the way to offshore drilling rigs. Again, we're making the clamps that support all the plumbing that's on there. To windmill. So now up in there's a large gearbox. It's spinning up in there. Our clamps are used to secure the electrical. The gearboxes there, they have oil coolers. So again, now plumbing. So our clamps are used that. Go into the food industry. So if we had a food processing plant, most everything you'd see in there is stainless steel tubing, right? Clean application. Our clamps then meet those criterias and it's used there. Pharmaceutical building. So vast variety of our clamps are being used and used worldwide. By allowing us to build the building, I'm able then to take 22 Gale Court, which is a warehousing facility, implement that into the new one, make our new changes as far as getting into a little bit more of the computer aided in our warehousing. So barcoding, scanners to make things more efficient to help the Behringer company, continue to grow, continue to stay in business for many years and combat just the rising costs of being in business itself. So then that would allow me, the second stage is to revamp my manufacturing at the Branchville location to, again, to make that more efficient and, again, help the business continue to grow as we have been throughout all these years.
You won't be doing any fabrication or assembly at this site? What is your plan at this site? Well, no fabrication.
That is correct. No fabrication. So,
And gentlemen, if I could, I apologize so the folks at home can hear. If you could pass the mic back and forth so they can hear the question that's being answered.
Go ahead. Ask it again.
You could just answer it because next one I'll get you.
The new facility would be the warehousing there, so there's no manufacturing. We'd be able to house all our products that we've made, and the employees there have a job title as a picker packer because they're picking parts, packing them in the air. As orders would come in, we pick them accordingly to how the quantity is, pack them how the customer is requiring them to do. We schedule shipping, and they're shipped out of that location, just as if they are at 22 Gale Court and at Ridge Road as of today.
And the last question I have is just hours, traffic, that kind of thing. What do you see at this new site?
Okay, hours operation, 30 to 5, that's standard. If opportunity for overtime, that would go as early as 6 in the morning. Sorry.
Traffic.
Oh, sorry, traffic, yep, we ship, so we have a standard FedEx truck and a standard UPS truck that service us 2 times a day, typical morning and afternoon. And then we have various trucks that would come in and take our shipments and or deliver items to us.
I have no further questions, but I'm sure the board or the professionals may.
Okay. Catherine?
I have no questions for this witness.
Dave?
The only question I had on the clamps that you referred to, are these clamps to support these pipes, or are you talking about the clamps on the end of like hydraulic hoses?
These are all pipe support clamp. So if you had a hydraulic line going across this table, it would be a clamp that was secured. It could be welded in place for the application. It comes apart, the tube would lay into it, it goes back together. They could be bolted in, they could be suspended. So it's always just something that's surrounding that plumbing.
So it's primarily and mainly support clamps.
That's exactly it. So a backhoe and bulldozer, you'd be there with an excavator that's moving back and forth. Typically, there's 2 lines that's going to make it move up, and it's going to move it back 2 lines. Those devices, whether it's a steel tubing or the flexible hose you'd see, our clamps are a support device. So they go on there, they grab it, and they're supporting it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, bring it back to the dais. Justin, or start?
I'm okay.
Nothing.
I'm fine, thank you.
What's the typical flow of the Gale Court and this proposed new warehouse going to be of either packaging or employees back and forth?
Once they're set up, so we have the new facility now up in operation, the racking will be there, all the stuff there. I'd have approximately 10 employees there. That would be my typical warehousing, shipping location then. So I would have approximately, I have the UPS trucks that come in there 2 times. I have the trucks that come in, they either dropping off or we're using them as a shipping truck, 4 to 5 a day, just like they are now, of various trucks, either box truck or a tractor trailer.
There was some talk about employees going back and forth from each building. Does that include deliveries and pickups from Gale Court to Aaron Way?
Yeah, what I would anticipate is for our typical deliveries that we use now, we have a typical 1-ton pickup truck. There's a rack body like you'd see landscapers use, small dump truck. That's our largest truck. So if we had to shuttle some parts back and forth, typically we would have employees there that are already stationed at their job. The only time I'd really have anybody that would move back and forth is I had to fill a spot maybe because of vacation or a sick day or something like that, or but my employees would all go there. The intended use for the Sparta then would slightly change because I need to incorporate and put all of my warehousing in one to help it make more efficient than multiple locations.
You mentioned overtime goes to 6 a.m., so that would be after the 5 p.m. typical day ends to the next day at 6 a.m.?
Nope, sorry, they could start early. So at 8-hour shifts, 8:30 to 5, they could start at 6 to pick up overtime for us.
Got it. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
John?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
I'm good for the moment.
My
Thank you.
questions were answered too. Thank you.
Celeste?
No, I'm good for the moment. Thank you.
Ryan?
I'm all set.
Okay, and I have no questions. So let me open it up to members of the public. Any questions?
I did, if you could just, sorry, Jennifer Derricks, Tap into Sparta. I just had a couple quick clarifying questions based on what you were saying. So can you just clarify what's happening with the Gale Court facility? Is that going to stay status quo, or are you changing that because of the new building, or is the new building just new warehousing?
New building will take care of, Gale Court will say essentially move into theirs of what we do today. I'm able then to use that as an overflow. So I may be able to continue that as a warehousing storage to be able to take advantage of buying more product, have a little more buying power, up my inventory, be able to have that as my storage space just like it is. So there would be no change in what you would see there now as far as it wouldn't be getting busier, there wouldn't be anything extra.
So it'll be basically overflow from the new facility?
Staging area, if we have stuff, like I say, if we have stuff that I can able to manufacture and or buy at a higher quantity to take advantage that way, and we're making things more efficient. That's where I would do, and then shuttle it over into the new location in the picking packing zones.
So the picking packing zone is on Aaron Way is the place where you said there will be 10 employees?
Correct.
And the Gale Court will just stay status quo?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Van Orden, I did have a question. So, not that I want to ask, I'm not asking you to ask for a variance, but I would like to know, how many parking spaces do you actually think you'll need at this property? Actually in place to make sure you never have to park on the street?
But the way it is right now, I have 10 employees that can operate this because that's how many I have right now. I can take 10 there with this added space that I have to make things more efficient. I can continue with 10. I'm hoping, though, we stay, I've been there since 2000. We've done nothing but grow. 2008, when there was a bad economy, we exceeded the growth in 07. We've done that ever since. It's something to be very proud of as a company. So to answer that, I'm hoping that, yes, we continue to grow. I have added employees throughout these years. I'm always excited to be able to make things more efficient, not to take a job away, never do that. It's just to make things flow easier. That helps me, the way I describe it to my employees, is the deeper the roots grow for Behringer, the more stable the company is that we work for. And Behringer has done that for the employees. They give back to us, they do very well. So I'm hoping that answers that, but I'll gladly answer it in a different way or in.
No, that answers, but if we were to say to you, could some of these spaces be, it's called banked, but it really means if the implementation of the paving of some of these spaces could be deferred to a later date and only installed if determined to be necessary by the township engineer or by you and Mr. Campbell, or your engineer, is there a number of spaces that could be, just what's called banked, deferred for future implementation?
May I comment on that, Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And I've worked in conjunction with the Behringer and understand our operation. And we've looked at just that aspect. We did not want to come here with multiple variances. We wanted to come here with one variance and relevant to the site. Thus, you have the parking stalls in accounts AC. With 10 employees and anticipated efficiencies, even if that doubled to 20 spaces and 2 customers, you would still have more than adequate and damn near double the parking required. If banking was considered, I would take and I would consider banking out this entire bay and sidewalk and eliminate spaces as I have designated 28 through 41. And that would then yield the 27 spaces, more than adequate for the proposed use, more than adequate for the future.
More than adequate, because adequate might be as little as 12. I mean, that's
Absolutely. And the future.
and it's part of this, Mr. Van Orden, because you also are trying to increase efficiency of the automated warehousing and automated storage, so to speak.
Yes, correct. If I may add too, we don't sell to the general public, so I don't have off-the-street people coming in for purchases.
There's very few visitors, or
Yeah, correct, right. We would have like a vendor or somebody like that, typical there, but again, the typical off-the-street, we do not have at any of our locations, so, limited that way.
and over at Gale Court, if you had to estimate, how many parking spaces do you think you use on a daily basis, or?
For our employees there, it's probably within that 7 to 8.
You always have more parking spaces than you need there, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Van Orden and Mr. Campbell.
Well, what would that give us?
I know, Mr. Campbell,
What
this
do we
is a
get
good
back?
question. Then, if you did that,
We save how much?
what would the impervious coverage be?
That's,
Okay.
that's.
You're way ahead of me. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Correct.
You reserve the right.
We could probably go to the architect if you want to come back with Alan. Alan has to come back anyway for the planning testimony. And I don't know whether we want to go any further.
Yeah, so, yeah, we unfortunately, we do have to have a hard stop at 9:30 tonight. So Tom, what would be
So
the next step
we
here?
should carry to a date certain. I didn't know what the chairman was planning for this next case, next hearing on this matter.
We look to Dory for some help on this one.
Right now, we have 2 applications that will be heard, so this will be our third.
On August 7th,
August 7th, correct.
2024. And they only have really one more witness with some well, Alan has to follow up on some things. I think we heard of the bulk of it.
Alan's planning testimony
Right.
would be.
Right. Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I think you could try to slip them in on the 7th, but you can decide that, whether it's in your, we never know whether somebody will, from those other applicants will carry because they want to, perhaps. I'm not saying they will, but.
Let's try for the 7th, if that works for everybody.
Okay. So we're going to carry the Behringer site plan application to August 7th, 2024 at 7 PM at this meeting room. There'll be no further notices.
Defer my answer till a later date.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sure it'll be very precise.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, I did learn a long time ago. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
much
you.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to move through the agenda, I want to try to get through everything and then maybe start the executive session around 9:45, so we have other board business. Does anybody have any other board business that you would like to bring up? Okay, I don't have any myself, so seeing none, we'll move on to updates. So typically, we'd go to town council. Deputy Mayor Blametti is unable to attend tonight, but I'm sure he'll provide us an update on August 7th. Environmental Commission?
I have a little bit of an update for us tonight. At our last meeting, which I attended, was on July 11th, and we had just a couple days previously our open space planning meeting, open space and recreation. And we'd gone through with them goals. And the goals just wanted to share with you are, okay, so number 1, protect Sparta's sense of place. Number 2, maintain high water quality. Number 3, conserve remaining open space. Number 4, preserve natural and cultural resources. And number 5, support exemplary recreational spaces. So we discussed those, so we're formulating those. And then another thing that came up during our discussion is that we found some preserved land, but we cannot find it documented. And what I mean by that is in the early 2000s, cluster developments were very popular, and along with those cluster developments, like over in the where the Skylands Golf Club is, they also have land around that they preserved as part of that whole project. And so we have I'd say about 8 different locations in Sparta that are these cluster developments that have set aside preserved land is protected, but we can't find the documentation so far, So that was interesting. I'm sure we will. It's just that nobody knows where it is for the time being. We went to Sparta Day, and we had several people sign up for the green team. And we're working on right now a couple of things. One is a municipal tree replacement ordinance. So we're trying to get the wording right and see what makes sense for Sparta with that one. And then also, we're doing research for alternative vehicles for Sparta vehicles. So I have here a document that is electric vehicle resource for local government and Drive Green. And so we're going through all of these possibilities for grants perhaps, or to gradually replace Sparta's fleet with more energy efficient and environmentally friendly vehicles. So Neil's working on that. And I guess that's about it.
A lot of good stuff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a quick update on the master plan. We met, I think it was the 17th in June, where we discussed the need to develop a time phase plan, Gantt chart or similar, with some steps so we could use to track our progress and an expected completion date, make sure we were staying on target. Catherine Samard gave us a preliminary overview of a community hub web page that she developed that's going to include a survey, and generate a lot of excitement and some positive feedback, I think, from the people that saw it. So we'll be meeting again, and we're going to pick up the discussion on those items when we meet. Okay. Relative to PIAC, I don't know if there's any updates. We'll try to get one between now and the next meeting, unless anyone has anything that they'd like to add for tonight. If not, minor site plan subcommittee. Mr. Enright.
Yeah, we met earlier tonight, and we had 3 new applications come in within the last 10 days, one of which we voted on tonight, 2 of which we're waiting on for some more information from the applicant before we can start having a conversation regarding them. And we also had another couple things that we're going to try to decide on before our next meeting, and we'll have an update regarding that.
All right, thank you. Okay, so before we go into executive session, let's go right to open to the public for matters that are not on the agenda and not relating to a hearing on an applicant. So, Jenny? Sure.
I appreciate it. Regarding the minor site plan subcommittee, are we going to get minutes from that? We've discussed this in the past, that it's an understanding that the ordinance requires it, so.
Want to take that when we take that?
I'll follow in the details that need.
Okay, so we have a set that we approved at the last meeting, and based on how we've done this, when we issue on a regular basis, those minutes were always attached to the minutes of the meeting that they said they were approved at. So we need to come up with a plan to catch up on the minutes and get those out there.
So you're going to sit on the subcommittee minutes because we don't have the regular meeting minutes? Or can you just release them?
Let's take a look and see if we can get some minutes for the 6/21 meeting for our next meeting. If not,
Okay.
we'll have that discussion.
I appreciate
understand
that.
your point.
And so thank you for that consideration. And then just regarding your executive session, I know you can't speak specifically, but what about affordable housing affords you the exemption from open?
Attorney-client privilege communication. That's what's stated in the motion.
I understand that. Is there litigation regarding?
No, but there's advice to the board. Called
Regard,
attorney-client privilege communication. You're familiar with it from other matters.
I am.
including
Is this in
the Board
rela-
of Education, and yes, the attorney can have attorney-client privilege communication with a board in closed session about general matters that involve attorney-client communication, including, and we've highlighted it, affordable housing, because this is important based upon a new statute, A4, that was adopted by the legislature.
that was my question. I appreciate the
Thank
answer.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Okay, so based on that, we've got a resolution 2414, which if approved would authorize the attorney-client privilege communication related to what was talked about. Tom, is there anything?
Yes,
that we
you're
need to
going
add?
to, it's a motion, I'll help you with a motion.
Okay,
It's a
thank you.
motion to go into close or executive session pursuant to Sections 7 and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege communication, including in general and affordable housing. The matters to be revealed to the public upon completion of all litigation and appeals and the removal of the need for confidentiality. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
And a roll call.
Roll call?
Jeanette Burke?
Yes.
Christine Dunbar?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bill Enright?
Yes.
Joan Furman?
Yes.
Justin Canales?
Yes.
Celeste Luciano?
Yes.
Ernie Ragsdad?
Yes.
Mike Sylvester?
Yes.
Chairman Ronday?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, do you expect that anything will be announced after the closed session?
I do not. I think we'll probably come back, go back to a public session, and then we'll adjourn from there.
Thank you. I think that's what I expect too, but, so basically, we will be in closed session, end the closed session, go back into open, and adjourn the meeting. So,
Yes.
thank you. Dory, if you could.
So Jenny, since you're the last person left, thank you for coming out tonight, and
Okay,
Yeah. Hope it stopped.
we're on.
Okay. Okay, so I guess I need to make a motion to go back into public session.
I'll make a motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Who was that second? I'm sorry. Les? And roll call, Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bill Enright.
Yes.
Joan Furman,
Yes.
Justin Canales.
Yes.
Celeste Luciano.
Yes.
Ernie Ragsdad,
Yes.
Mike Sylvester.
Yes.
And Chairman Ronde.
Yes. Okay, unless, does anyone else have any other business? If not, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Can I do it all in favor, Tom?
Yeah, yes, that's fine.
Let's do a roll call. Let's make it official. I don't, you know. Roll call, please, Dory.
Wanna
The
do roll
motion
call
that
for
never
adjournment?
fails.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bill Enright.
Yes.
Joan Furman.
Yes.
Justin Canales.
Yes.
Celeste Luciano.
Yes.
Ernie Ragsdad.
Yes.
Mike Sylvester.
Yes.
Chairman Ronde.
Yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting tonight.
Everybody.